And as always, we try to
This is not another Friday edition. How many Friday editions do I show up in my jammy jams?
You are right. This is very different of Leo. He's never not shown up in a Beryl shirt. How's that? Ever, ever, ever.
Not only am I not wearing pants.
Oh, yeah. That's not true.
I'm wearing a T-shirt that I would wear to bed.
Yeah. Well, sort of. We talked about that. Anyway.
Well, I at least wear it into the bed.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good to know.
But it's important. I mean, like, all the media jokes about wearing pants or not when they're on there, like, you can only see them from, like, the chest up during all these telebroadcasting, and it's the running joke. So I figure I'd take the joke one step further and not even wear a collared shirt. We're on radio.
I'm just glad he really didn't come in how he actually sleeps. That's all I'm saying. We'll leave it there.
My wife's listening.
So let's go ahead and jump into the market report really quick, and then I have a special guest on the line that we're going to bring in here in just a few moments. So let's look at this week's market data compared to last. And so the number of new listings that we have is 1,159. We've had 1,229 price decreases. And back on the market, these may have been temporary off the market, 558 sold. 1,511. That number is still higher than our new listings. But again, we got some lagging stuff there going on.
We're recovering.
Well, pending 1118. So here's what we're seeing. The buyers out there that are looking, they are serious buyers. They're not tire kickers because agents are not taking these buyers through the properties. They're not. People like me, I actually posted a video. I didn't post it yet. I did it, which talks about how we protect ourselves when we're showing property, because we don't want to spread any germs either. And we got this really high potent solution that we wipe everything down, switches, doorknobs, everything after we leave. We do have face masks. We have booties if people want us to wear them, and gloves. So we don't touch anything, and we give the buyer a glove as well, so that basically, they're not touching anything either, because it's nature for them to want to open the cabinets and all that sort of stuff. So
you are now wiping your fingerprints off everything instead of just the cookie jar and the milk jug?
Well, I don't have any fingerprints on anything because I'm wearing gloves when I go through properties.
Pat, you bring up a good point. I said this as a joke yesterday when I was in Winn-Dixie getting some supplies because I was out of town doing an inspection. So basically, there were so many people walking around Winn-Dixie with bandanas and face masks on.
Right.
I was unsure if they were there to rob the place or for grocery shopping.
It does look a little strange.
Let's err on the side of grocery shopping.
I don't know. It was Winn-Dixie.
So, all right. No bashing Winn-Dixie. Here we go. All right. So we're going to look at these numbers side by side for you every single week, and then we're going to compare them month over month.
I'm impressed. We got more new listings. We got less. We have more price decreases.
Yeah.
Back on markets, that's a pretty good one. So even though they're temporarily off market, they're going back on market. This looks like a thriving, in the midst of all this looks like a
still moving. And so depending on how long we're in lockdown will determine what direction these numbers go. And I do think we're in for a minimum, a little bit of a shift, maybe a little bit of a flat line in terms of prices, probably a little bit of a dip. Best case scenario, right? Best case scenario. So if you were listening to the show last week, we were talking all about, was it last week or the week before? We actually pulled CDC numbers.
Every week.
We pulled the CDC numbers, and we pulled the numbers from the U.S. Census.
Oh, that was 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so we pulled it to actually verify the number of people in terms of closer to a percentage that were affected by the Spanish flu. And what we determined was that number was legit. Almost 50% of the American population was terminated. Yeah, based on from the Spanish flu.
Terminated without severance.
Yeah, pretty much. So we started doing a little bit of homework, and we thought, how old would somebody have to be in order to actually have lived through the Spanish flu? And that answer is, in their hundreds.
Yeah, over 100.
Mm-hmm. And so we came across some different people. One lady was 115 years old, and she's still alive today. And we actually have her granddaughter on the phone joining us. So Miss Ruth Lux, she's 71. She lives in Liberdale, Iowa. And she's got a bunch of letters from her family that actually lived through this Spanish flu. Good morning, Ruth. How are you?
I'm fine. It's chilly in Iowa.
Is it now? What's the temperature like there in Iowa?
Well, this morning it's 25 degrees.
That's what it feels like in this studio, so I'm right there with you. I should have brought a jacket.
You know, we got a premenopausal woman in here and one that's doesn't know anything about that, so you know, he's always freezing and I'm always hot, but that's the way it goes.
Oh, it's crazy. So there were actual letters passed down about these very interesting times.
So Ruth, I'm curious, outside of the letters, did you have any conversations with your grandma about these times in history, maybe when she was a little bit younger, about family members and who all was left? Like, what can you share about that?
Well, actually, that is not I do not have a 115-year-old grandmother.
Oh, I must have mixed it up. Sorry, we talked to a lot of people. That's on me.
Okay. All right. That's not me. The letters I have, first of all, you need to know that my family is a bunch of savers of family memorabilia. So these letters that I have referring to the Spanish flu were written by my mother's godmother. My mother died when she was 93. That's 10 years ago. So in 1918, my mother was 2 years old. She was living with her family in South Dakota. The woman who wrote the letters was her godmother and also a very distant cousin, but they were still close to each other, even though they weren't related that closely. So she lived in Casey, Iowa, which is maybe 100 miles west of Des Moines. So I think the best feel for this is just if I read the letter.
That would be awesome.
Should I do that?
We would love it if you could read the letter. And our Facebook watchers, we get a lot of people that watch, and unfortunately, since you're not in the studio with us, they can't hear you. So I'm going to encourage them to tune in at moneytalk1010.com so that they can hear you read the letters. And if you miss it by any reason, we will post it on a podcast. So take it away, Ruth.
Make sure you
okay.
Like and subscribe.
This letter was written January 6, 1919.
Wow.
Dear cousin and family, I suppose you are wondering what has become of Joe and Beck. Her name was Rebecca and her husband was Joe. We are still here and at present are all well, but have had our turns with the flu. First, Elizabeth, that was a teenage daughter who was at a boarding school in Des Moines, had her turn, and hers turned into pneumonia the first thing. I went up and took her to the hospital where she was 11 days. Then I brought her home. She was here a week when I took her back to school. About 4 days later, Fritz, who is a son, took it here. The third day, he was sick. I took it. Then Marguerite, who's a daughter. Fritz was very sick. He was in bed 11 days. Marguerite and I never went to bed, although I was pretty sick a couple of days, but we all got over it fine. I cleaned up the house, aired it out, and washed the bedclothes. I had hardly finished when Leonard, that is her brother-in-law, took it, so I went out there. 2 days later, Marie, who's Leonard's wife, took down. I took care of them till they were up a couple days. I think I was out there 10 or 11 days. I came home, straightened up, and washed and baked bread. Then we butchered 2 hogs. While in the midst of butchering, Will Hughes came and begged me to go out to Jim Shannon's. They were all down and not a soul to take care of them. When I got there, I found 7 in bed, 1 a baby 8 days old. The only one to wait on them was a 6-year-old girl who was up for the second day. The mister had been waiting on the rest till he had a relapse and kept on getting worse till he died a week later. I stayed till the funeral, which was the day before Christmas. The rest of the family was all up by that time. Last Monday, I went out to George Joint's, where the whole family was down, and stayed till Thursday when the mister was up and the rest doing fine. So you see, I have been kept busy. I have had several calls when it was impossible for me to go. One was George Adamson, where 8 were in bed. The missus was buried Saturday with her infant baby in her arms. You remember her, Maggie Eckhart. I suppose you heard that Clarence Mowry's wife and sister both died of the flu only 2 hours apart.
10 seconds.
It was while I was out at Leonard.
Quick, this is a live broadcast, so we're going to have to go to a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
So hold that
Okay.
thought. We're going to back
I'm
up a
almost
bit
finished.
and come right
Okay,
back.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, this is Aaron Davis.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. You're listening in with Katrina and Leo as we interview Ruth from Litterdale, Iowa, sharing family's letters and stories.
It's pretty profound, really, that they have these letters from the early 1900s.
So profound you
These-
had to cut her off mid-sentence.
Well, I didn't mean to, but the letters are 100 years old, and I just love that she kept them because so many people in this generation now, they just don't keep things.
Well, if you tried to keep paper now, like this sheet of paper we printed on, the ink will actually fall off the paper within 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, not ink from back then. That's
No,
for
that
sure.
was real ink on real
Yeah.
parchment.
All right, so Ruth, if you don't mind, could you just back up and read a little bit of the highlights and then finish the letter? And I know you also have a reply letter, right? I think.
No, I don't have a reply letter.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, her mother.
Okay, I selected this letter because it gave the best details.
Okay.
Okay, this letter was written by my mother's godmother who lived in Casey, Iowa. She wrote to my mother's family in South Dakota. My mother was 2 years old at the time of this letter. So this godmother, her family had the flu. They all recovered. So, of course, she had some immunity. And then because she was such a compassionate, kind-hearted, hard-working person, neighbors would call her to come out to their homes and help them when they were all sick. And often they were several people from the family were in bed with the flu, and maybe one person to wait on everyone. People were just dying all the time. So where I left off was right here. I've had several calls when it was impossible for me to go. One was George Adamson, where 8 were in bed. The missus was buried Saturday with her infant baby in her arm. I suppose you heard that Clarence Mowry's wife and sister both died of the flu only 2 hours apart. That was while I was out at Leonard's, who is her son, the writer's son. Gus Mowry is on his deathbed now. The doctors have given him up also from the flu. Austin Welsh and his wife both died of it 1 day apart. Frank and Will Rhoda died of it only 3 hours apart. 2 days after their father had died of it, they died on the day of his funeral. I could go on for another hour like this, but we'll quit. We had 2 letters from Leo, that's her son. This last week, he is still in France and thinks he will be sent home before long. Such good news. Love to all. Beck.
Wow. So, based on the letter, how many people were actually left?
Well, let's see. From some other information I have, 6,000 people died in Iowa
Wow. Wow.
from the flu. And, there were over 600,000 died in the United States. And that was more than 10 times the number that were killed of Americans that were killed in World War I.
Wow, that's incredible. How many letters do you have from family members? And just out of curiosity, what are some of the oldest dated ones you have?
Okay, the oldest dated one that I've found was a letter written to my grandmother when she was a teenager in 1897, and it's from a girlfriend of hers.
Wow.
I've also got my great aunt's 1912 travel journal and her parents sailed to Germany and spent 3 months there visiting relatives. Now, that's not the original handwritten one. It's just a typed transcript. Someone else has got the original. I have 330 of my dad's World War II letters to my mother. That's before they were married. I have about 750 letters from my mother's brother during World War II back to his family. So you can see letter writing is in the genes of this family.
Yeah, and I mean, back then, that's what people did, right? We didn't have the internet and email, and that's...
And not even a phone.
Yes, you're right, not even a phone.
Not even a phone. So you had two ways to communicate people. You could write them a letter, or you could go to see them.
Show up. Yep, that's right.
That's my old strategy, is just showing up places.
Hey, Ruth, can I ask you a question? Do you own a smartphone?
I do not. I'm back in 1919. I don't even have a computer.
So we'll figure out a way to get you a copy of the broadcast, Ruth, knowing that you don't have a cell phone and you don't have a computer. We'll be creative with that.
We can mail a cassette tape.
And do you have a cassette player?
Yes, I do have that.
Okay. Do you have a CD player or no?
Yes, I have a CD player.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes.
Well, we will probably get it on a CD and give you a copy of the broadcast.
Oh, that would be great. I could share it with the cousins.
So tell me, who's left in your family? You have a cousin here in Florida?
No, that's a cousin of a friend who asked me, to get your number on the radio station so that he could listen. So he's probably listening now.
Oh, I see. Okay, great.
But I myself have only 4 cousins left. I never married, so I have no children. My immediate family was small, and they've all died. So I'm down to 4 cousins.
Wow. And do they live near you, or are they spread out?
Yes, they do live near me.
And so what about all this memorabilia? Since you're the last line in your family, what's your intentions for all this memorabilia when you're done with it?
Well, the cousins are all around my age, but some of their children are very interested in genealogy, so I'll give that to them. These, like my grandmother, is equally related to my cousins, so it's still in the family.
Got it. So your cousins do have some children?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Good.
Ruth, I have a question. What kind of career were you in throughout your life, and why didn't you leave Iowa? Most likely probably because of family. And have you ever made it to Florida?
I have never been to Florida, no. In fact, I was going to take a bus trip to Savannah and Charleston in March, but that got canceled. My career was, I was a medical secretary at a hospital about 8 miles from here, which is the largest town. I did that for 46 years, and I've lived in Lauderdale all my life, in fact, in the same block, so I'm pretty rooted. And I guess, I never had a desire to leave. I've traveled a lot. I've been to Europe 3 times, and coast to coast, except Florida, sorry. I like Iowa, I guess. I'm just a rooted homebody.
Yeah, I'm asking on our live stream too, because the people on Facebook live streaming, it's kind of like TV through social media. They can't hear you, Ruth, because you're on the air with us. So I'm asking them if they have any questions for you while I have you on the air.
Okay.
Do you have anything for Ruth?
No, I'm just taking it all in. I mean, my wife works in healthcare, and she's a speech-language pathologist, so she hears stories not similar to this, but stories of family members who have letters and other memorabilia from generations past. And all we have nowadays is something on a computer, and if that computer becomes obsolete, we'll never be able to pass that along.
Yeah.
And there's so much character to a handwritten letter, even versus something typed on a computer. There's just no substitute for the personal touch of a handwritten letter.
Yeah. It's interesting because even some of the handwriting is just so profound, from that time. And now you've kind of sparked my interest to see what my mother might have from my own family. I probably should have asked that, right? But I know my grandmother was born in 1899, my great-grandmother, and she lived all the way until I was in high school. And so she may or may not have some things like that I kept from family.
Right. So ask your questions while they're still here, because, you know, so many people don't get interested in their family often until they're a little older themselves, and then often it's too late. The people that you want to ask the questions to are gone.
That is true.
I had my grandfather for a long time, and I would ask him all kinds of questions, and I would spark these conversations with my kids around, and just have my grandpa kind of share, like, what things were like when he grew up, and you know,
yes.
And as a matter of fact, my grandmother saved this article from when he was younger. My grandfather was probably about 16 years old, and he actually hit an ambulance. He hit an ambulance, and my grandmother kept that. And we probably harassed him about that for so long, and it was really just part of the fun. So, but yeah, I think you're right, Ruth. Talk to the oldest person you have in your family. I bet you they have profound stories and just the time in which people lived, right? Icebox, not a refrigerator. And they always wondered why my grandmother would use the term icebox, right?
Yeah, because it literally had a piece of ice in it.
Yes.
We call that a cooler.
Yeah. So, Ruth, I thank you very much for spending your morning with us. I know it's very early your time, and thanks so much for joining us this morning on Tampa Home Talk.
Well, thank you for contacting me. It was a pleasure to talk to you and your listeners.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. All right, our off-air number, if you want to reach us, 775. You can call or text with any questions, 813-377-2775. We'll be back. Just a really quick break.
Beryl Engineering and Inspection, joined by a very, very special guest on the phone. We have Ruth. No,
Ruth's gone.
I know. We have Sarah. Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Sarah. We're here for your money update, your money talk piece of the Tampa Home Talk.
What's going on in the crazy world of mortgages right now that we are hearing so much about?
Tell me about monies.
Okay, so, all right, so here's the update. This week, looks like about 6.6 million Americans filed for unemployment, bringing the total over the last 3 weeks to nearly 17 million. On a good note, conventional rates are really falling. They're at all-time lows right now.
What's all-time lows? Can you give me an example?
So they're averaging right now about 3.3% on a fixed 30-year mortgage versus last year at about 4.12. Obviously, that's going to be higher credit scores that are putting more than just the minimum required down. We're still struggling a lot on the government side.
But as always.
Oh, it's been a pretty rough last 4 weeks. Ginnie Mae provides liquidity and serves as the principal financing arm for government loans like FHA, VA, and USDA. Under the Ginnie Mae Mortgage-Backed Securities Program, approved issuers who service mortgage-backed securities are required to remit scheduled principal and interest payments to their investors, even when they're not receiving monthly mortgage payments from their borrowers. So obviously right now there are major concerns on the government side regarding the impact where a large number of borrowers are expected to take advantage of forbearance options, as a result of health issues or job loss during the pandemic and after. So if you can imagine the disparity, like as a servicer, if you service $100 million in loans and $50 million of your portfolio are borrowers who cannot make their payments, that's a problem. It can be crushing.
Well, the lenders have, like when a loan is in default, is it 3 or 4 times they have to have that amount liquid?
That's a good question, and I would have to get it verified.
I know the answer. I thought it was 3 times the amount of that note when the borrower is in default, they have to have liquid.
Right. So imagine if you have a warehouse line of $1 million, you're going to get twice. You can advance the same amount. So you have $2 million. So you have $1 million worth of loans that you've made, and you have early payment defaults, for example, that equal $300,000. Now you only have $700,000 in available warehouse line because that loan's no longer saleable. And to double that, you're no longer at $2 million, you're at 1.4. So it starts to shrink your ability, your liquidity, and your ability to lend.
Which is why we've seen lenders tighten up on the score requirements and not be attractive on those riskier type loans, which are FHA.
Right. So the riskier type loans, the government-backed loans, the lower credit scores, the higher debt ratios are not super attractive right now because of the fear, in terms of the impact on the servicing side.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So conventional prices are attractive. So anybody over a rate of what should inquire about refinancing? If they're
700 and up credit scores are seeing phenomenal pricing right now. Obviously, they're looking for job stability. We've had some contracts fall apart even this week that were perfectly well qualified and were furloughed, lost their jobs.
For one of them.
So we're talking about the same one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was unfortunate.
He's like, what happened? My guy was almost done inspection and you guys canceled midterm. Well, he got furloughed right in the middle of the inspection. We've been trying so hard to get this kid under contract.
Yep. Very well qualified borrower. Didn't do anything wrong, just got told, obviously very short notice that he was temporarily going to be unemployed for a few months. So a lot of people are facing that right now. I read one statistic, and I don't know if it's accurate, that said, half of the renters in the country right now are being impacted by A, coronavirus, or B, job loss. So it's going to be a problem. It's going to be an ongoing.
A lot of my, I've got counterparts in all areas of the country, and a lot of them are saying that they expect, even though some of them did get rent payments in April, they're expecting to receive little or no rent in May.
Right. And we're seeing things in the news now where apartment complexes are actually trying to raise rent just based on their normal process, and they're trying to put a stay on that. So that they
can raise it in the middle of this, but
I don't either. But yeah. So, on the upside, stable job, good credit. You're going to see excellent conventional pricing right now.
So if someone has a rate over what, 4.5, should they inquire with you to see if it makes sense to refinance?
Yeah, we're getting an influx of refinance requests right now. It's a little challenging on the mortgage side, simply because pretty much every lender in the country, its employees are working remote. So we're getting inundated with that type of business and just trying to manage it as quickly as possible.
So, Sarah, I do have a question. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, right, that the consumer might not necessarily see. One of those things is Florida is considered a high fraud state, and basically they always pull what they call the 4506Ts, which is the verification that the tax returns you gave your lender is the same as you filed with the IRS. You didn't add any zeros or ones or that kind of stuff to those tax returns. And one of the challenges that I'm seeing, for example, one of my listings, the seller signed last Friday, still not ready to close. It's still delayed. There's controversy back and forth, but it would be for an attorney and a judge to decide if the force majeure clause of the contract would kick in. My opinion, it would, but again, I'm not an attorney. And so with that being said, we're seeing delays. And so and I'm really nailing these lenders to the wall that are delayed, asking them why it's delayed specifically. And so I had one yesterday tell me that the client was self-employed. They've ordered the 4506T twice by mail with the IRS, and that both times they haven't gotten it. So I said, what's the turn time to get it? They're like 7 days. So today makes the second 7-day cycle, and I'm like, okay, what are we going to do if we're still not getting this in the mail after like how many attempts? And so I just keep thinking, oh my gosh, isn't the definition of insanity doing the same dang thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Like, what are we going to do differently? And so I've really been pushing it. And is that based on the lender, right? Like what their comfort level is, if they're going to waive that or verify it another way?
Policies are varying from one lender to the next. I can just speak for what we're doing. The third-party vendors that we use to electronically receive 4506 transcripts are basically telling us they're either not being processed or there is absolutely no turn time or ETA in terms of when to expect 4506T results that we typically in a normal market would get in 48 hours, 72 hours. How we're handling someone, so what we're seeing is we're waiving that requirement for tax transcripts. And it's different from one borrower to the next. For example,
if you're self-employed, does that change it?
Yeah, and I'll touch on that, but just initially to start off with your W-2 borrower who's using a 2019 tax return to qualify, transcripts aren't back, but we know that they filed. You know, we may say, hey, go online to IRS, where's my refund, and print us a screenshot. If the refund amount that displays on their website when you log in matches what's expected on the tax return you provided, we can link those two things together and move forward. We're making exceptions, like I said, and waiving.
Self-employed, if they wrote a check, which could be the case, right? And
so for the self-employed borrower,
they're taking that.
So for the self-employed borrower, we're looking for recent business activity to show that you're still active. As far as getting transcripts back, again, it's on a case-by-case basis, but really what's happening and what they're really getting tight on right now are verbal verifications of employment. They want to make sure that you're actively employed literally on the day of closing. And so it's challenging for W-2 borrowers because a lot of their companies are working remote. People aren't there to answer the phone to make those verifications, and they're taking longer. But for the self-employed person, we're looking for recent business activity. Depending on your industry. For example, you may have a website where you sell goods. You may have completed a work request and invoiced a customer for payment. There are a couple ways that we can get that.
How active you are, or just there's still something going on?
That you're still active, just not how active you are, but that you are active, actively working. And so we're coming up with solutions to document that for those folks that are self-employed that don't have anyone that can verify on their behalf.
Here's a craziness, and this is why America should have a reserve. Like, I mean, I've heard every excuse in the book, but you know what? Get another job, deliver pizzas, do something to figure out how you can get a 2 to 3 month cushion. Think about this. If the whole world had a 2 to 3 month cushion and this pandemic came about, all of America could most of America, except for like truckers and, you know, that sort of stuff. Most of America could have taken a month or two, literally siesta, shut it down, and we would rebound so much quicker. But instead, we got these huge stimuluses, and you know, whatever. It's another whole topic, I guess, for another day.
We don't have a crystal ball on the long-term impact of that as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
All right, so how bad are government rates, and is anyone getting that done, or is it still costing them an arm and a leg?
Higher credit scores are still able to secure government loans. They're less riskier book of business. Lower credit scores are eligible for government loans, but it's very challenging because the pricing is very off. The pricing is very unattractive for lower credit scores right now. The people in that 620, 640, up to 660 credit score box are going to be very challenged to secure a government loan right now. That's not very expensive. Interest rates are coming with points. That may become the new norm. You know, if they don't have that
type of stuff, right? Not unconventional.
On the government, correct? Yeah, and it may take a while to bounce back there. I mean,
Sarah, real quick, if I can interject, what that means on the real estate side, agents, is, you know, where we would see seller assistance and closing costs of 3%, you might see that at 6% in order to get that deal actually done. And so
correct.
The other 3% of that is going to go towards the cost to actually get that borrower a loan.
That's correct. Pricing is not, we're not in a position in pricing a loan to offer credits to the borrower. It doesn't exist right now. Instead, it's the opposite. It's points in terms of cost to a borrower. So if they're only prepared with their required down payment, we're going to run into a cash-to-close problem. And again, you're right, Katrina, that would fall back on the seller to assist to make it happen.
We're trying to get ahead of that because we know it's going to get tighter for sellers. We know every deal is going to get harder. It's just how it is. So if you're looking for some assistance from me, or you want some assistance from Sarah, you want to check your rate and you're not going anywhere, see how that would work on a refi, our off-air number is 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. 2775. You can call or text, and I'll get connected with any of our guests, myself, Sarah, 813-377. After the break.
Okay, with Beryl Engineering and Inspection, caught completely off guard by our intro music.
I know,
there.
it came out of nowhere.
We didn't even have commercials leading in.
Pat, can you hear us in the live Facebook stream? Like, not
Do
on
you
the...
get Adam Talley on the phone now?
Do we have him?
Yeah. Adam, are you there?
Nope.
Nope, I guess not.
Oh, yes, he is.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. We have Adam Talley.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you today?
Good.
Morning. What
do
do
you
you-
have the coronavirus? Is that why you're out?
What do you think of my Jammy Jams?
I saw your Jammy Jams look very cute, Leo.
Thank you.
No, I do not have the coronavirus. I have I cracked one of my crowns last night, so I'm going in for an emergency little dentist appointment this morning.
No, Adam, I told you to stop eating jawbreakers. It was not good for your teeth.
It didn't work for Willy Wonka either.
Yeah. But other than that, I do have some good news for all of our listeners out there.
Yeah, we'll take good news on insurance on a Good Friday. Give it to us. What you
Oh,
got?
this is Good Friday, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. So, and there was an article out yesterday as well. But a lot of carriers are currently planning, and they're in the discussion phases of they're going to give back a percentage of the premium to their auto insurance clients
Yeah.
because nobody's on the road right now. There's a handful that are out there. I can confirm from our carriers that we have that Safeco and Travelers are indeed looking at it. There's some regulatory things that they have to go through. The article I read also listed Progressive, which is one of our main carriers. However, I haven't received anything from them, so I can't verify that one.
But it's in the
But
works.
the
We're
way it's
talking
going to
about
work, it is in the works, yes. And when most of them do it, they all kind of do it because it looks pretty bad if you're the one that, if you're the only one that doesn't do it.
Yeah. What do you think,
so what-
if you had to guess, 25, 35%? Would it be as high as 50% of the premium they would
No,
give
so
back?
what was it?
50%.
What-
Crazy?
They're not
It'll
making
be
anything.
10%.
10.
Yeah, the two that I've seen, the way they're going to do it is 15% back on at least 2 months worth of premium.
Okay, Pat,
So-
let's talk about this. How is traffic again right now?
There is no
It
traffic.
is minimal, but hey, some is better than nothing, and that's kind of how I look at it on that front, because they don't, they still have expenses, they're still paying their employees, they have everything else as well, so, and
Depending on your
especially in the
carrier,
state
you
of
might be-
Florida.
We talked about this last week, but you might be able to put your vehicle not in use if you have extra ones and that you're not driving.
True.
You could. Now I'll tell you, I myself changed my wife's car because she's working from home. I changed it from, from commuter use to pleasure use. But unfortunately, it didn't have any effect on my premium. So it's going to be case by case. But those are some of the steps that you can do.
I have a question for you, Adam.
but
Are
hey,
you under 25 or no?
no,
So I was just wondering if it was age related.
I'm in my 30s, thankfully. Get to make new bad decisions instead of the 20-year-old bad.
Is he under 25? Have you not seen and worked with that guy?
For some reason, I just thought he was a lot younger. I don't ask him their age regularly.
Fair enough. But,
That's
anyway, some good news for all of our auto insurance clients out
Did you just
there.
call Adam a whippersnapper?
No, I did
I
not.
think she did.
I think she did.
That was your term, not mine.
I think next time you come in the studio, she's going to chub your cheeks. She's going to
No,
grab you by the
I'm
cheeks.
not.
Oh, man.
So cute. Who's eating a good meal?
Oh, wow. Well, anyways,
I'm used to
any other questions or anything on the insurance side?
By the way,
sorry?
DeSantis just closed all the dental offices.
Are you serious?
Yeah, breaking news. DeSantis just closed all the dental offices.
Wait.
Pat George, you got to be joking around.
I'm going to have to look that one up. Why would that? I thought.
He's saying that because I got to get my crown fixed today. That's all.
blasting that stuff on the air if it's not true.
Pat, you're a respected member of the media. We take what you say at face value. Our listeners could be confused right now.
I don't think our listeners are going to be confused.
Is that your late April?
Members of the respected, maybe not, but definitely a member of the media. So thanks, Pat.
Yeah, definitely not respected.
That one was below the belt.
The four of us are respected members of the media. I should get an AP badge.
Yeah, the four of us are essential employees.
Well, I want Super Bowl press passes after all of this, all this time during coronavirus that we're still operating. I think that's what we need to show as proof for our media passes. So
You
let's
realize
work on that.
That's just the ability to watch it on TV. That's the media press pass.
Oh well.
You're in luck.
But there we go. Anyways, guys, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thanks for having me on. And I would say probably about a month or so out for those refunds, just so if anybody's wondering out there from the auto insurance company.
We'll take good news and the Good Friday versus bad news. We'll take it.
Absolutely. So it's better than nothing. So that's always a good thing.
Happy
Easter. Have a great weekend. Thanks.
All right. This is Tampa Home Talk. That was our weekly insurance tip
So
with Kelly.
So the Easter egg to find is your insurance discount?
I suppose.
Hidden in the bushes of the weeds of the paperwork?
I'm curious what some of our families are doing, for Easter this weekend, being that, we're not doing the family gathering that we would normally do.
Oh, I'm cooking a virtual ham.
And this is the first year there's not going to be an Easter egg roll on the White House since Ruth was a baby.
Wow.
Wow.
I'll tell you, one more little thing just because we have time. One of our past clients, which is also a regular listener on Facebook and to the show, he actually works for Oracle, which they are in charge of the Zoom platform, and they're, working on overload right now. They're, I'm sure they're probably pulling their hair out.
Yeah, Zoom is a free app. How do they make money?
So, Michael, just kind of curious if you want to share anything from the Zoom platform and what you guys are doing and what you're seeing, because I'm sure you guys are working ridiculous hours.
Yeah, how is Zoom making money? Because they used to have a 40-minute cap on their meetings, but that's gone.
I think I'm a paid Zoom member, but I forget what I get with that.
You get the ability to have a meeting that's more than 40 minutes.
Yeah, well, we need meetings more than 40 minutes. So.
Well,
and we get to record them. I don't think you can do that in the free version, right? All right. This is Tampa Home Talk, and we'll be back in hour number 2 with Catherine Starkey.
That'll be good.
She's one of the commissioners for Pasco County.
I heard Pasco County is annexing Hernando County.
Oh, stop it. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of the things going on in Pasco around COVID-19 and otherwise, because unfortunately these cases are up. And she's originally going to share just the evolution of Pasco, but we tabled that for another day. And if you want to get us on our author number, it's 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. Thanks for chiming in on that, Michael. We'll table that till next hour. And remember, love what is little, fix it. Stick on hour number 2.